Hi, I'm Jeff, and welcome to another one of my videos where I take a look at all the new comic books coming out on either March 21st or 22nd, 2023, and I ask myself the question, what one new comic book would I buy this week if I could buy just one book? Let's go ahead and start off this video this week first by taking a look back at my pick from 2 weeks ago, which was Clear, issue number 1. And the question remains, was it a worthy and worthwhile pick to be my just one book pick of the week? And the answer is, yeah, sure. Am I like go over the moon about it? No. Do I think it's the best thing that I've read in years? No. Was it solid? Yes. Am I going to keep reading it? Yes, I am. For the most part, I thought it was good and entertaining. I like the premise. I like the environment that the story is taking place in, meaning in the future, and the context for the world that everybody's living in. They're solving a mystery of how this woman died. It's apparent suicide, but there are significant doubts that it was suicide. So our hero is looking into what actually happened. That's a little bit trite, boring in a typical way. But it was executed well, and so I'm interested. I'm going to read some more. One other thing I will say about it is that it did seem a little bit convoluted in that there was a lot of story that they told, but the story kind of jumped around in a way that was okay. I didn't get completely lost, but I wasn't clear to me why the story was told in that fashion. So it makes me wonder, like, what purpose was it supposed to serve? But anyways, that's all I have to say. Ultimately, it was good, very good, not great. The jury's still out on great, but it was good enough for me to be interested in checking out more issues, and that's saying something in a world where I'm trying to limit my comic books each week to a minimum. If you read Clear, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it. All right, we're going to move on now and talk about the, hold your breath now, 12 books that are coming out this week that I want to mention to you. Now, most of them I'm mentioning just because I think you should know about them. Very few of them are actual recommendations, so I'm going to give very little commentary on it so we can move through it quickly. Let's start right now. The first book I want to mention this week is a new book. It is called Dead Romans, issue number 1 of a 6-issue limited series from Image Comics. Here's the description. Arminius, a Germanic prince raised in Rome, has sworn vengeance against the empire that butchers his people. He wants to make a queen of the woman he loves, Honoria, a fellow slave. Now, 50,000 Romans will die to give her a throne she never asked for or wanted. Lush, beautiful illustrations bring to life a brutal tale of love and war from the birth of the Roman Empire. I mentioned this mostly this week because it's not typical. It's not typical for me to say, hey, check out this comic book about something that happened during the Roman Empire. Doesn't come up very often. Possibly, maybe there's some history buffs out there, some people who really like this genre of Earth's history that might be interested in checking it out for that, so I wanted to make sure it was on your radar. The next book I'm going to mention to you this week is Torrent, issue number 2 from Image Comics. Here's the description. Michelle Metcalf used to be Crackerjack, the most happy-go-lucky superhero. But all that changed the night her husband was murdered and her son was kidnapped. Spoilers for issue number 1 if you haven't read that. Now, all she cares about is getting her boy back. But things don't exactly go according to plan as Michelle barrels toward an ending that no one saw coming. Okay, so I mentioned Torrent many times so far. I mentioned it the week it came out. It sounded exciting to me. And then I mentioned it in my 2 weeks later review that I loved it. I thought it was great. As opposed to like Clear from last week, which I thought was very good. I thought Torrent was fantastic. I really liked it. So of course then I'm really excited about issue number 2. And that will be one of the 3 books that I am buying this week. If you didn't pick up Torrent, I personally recommend picking up issue number 1. Nobody's as excited about it as I am. Maybe that says something that I'm out of touch, or maybe I'm the one with an understanding that other people don't have. Regardless, I highly recommend it. I bet you can still find issue number 1 for cover price on the shelves in your comic book shop potentially. I highly recommend picking it up and reading it, as well as issue number 2. The next book I'm going to mention to you this week is Blue Book, issue number 2 of a 5-issue limited series from Dark Horse Comics. Here's the description. After their bizarre encounter with an unknown floating object and the creatures that inhabit it, Betty and Barney Hill head home in the darkness, only to find themselves plagued by the residues of their night sky confrontation. Tiny Onion Studios and Dark Horse Comics present a line of upcoming creator-owned work from the mind of James Tynion IV across a broad spectrum of his interests, from non-fiction supernatural encounters to high-concept coming-of-age monster comics. Also including True Weird, The Green Children by James Tynion IV, Michael Avon Oeming, and Aditya Bidikar. So I mentioned this book this week because you all know I am a gigantic James Tynion IV fan. Because of that, I buy everything he puts out. I'm going to pick up Blue Book issue number 2, even though I've already read Blue Book issue number 2, because as I mentioned when I mentioned issue number 1 last month, this was a book that was published virtually online via his Substack for his paid subscribers at first, and now it's made available in print. This book is not for everybody. I totally don't pick this up if this is your first James Tynion IV experience and be like, what is Jeff talking about? It is unusual, especially because it's a non-fiction comic book. Non-fiction in that these people existed and they said they got abducted by aliens. Whether or not they did, who knows? But this is a factual retelling in comic book form of their account of the situation. Anyways, it's entertaining to me. If that kind of thing would be entertaining to you, I bet this will be entertaining to you. And if it's not entertaining to you, then better move on, because you're not going to like it. But I mentioned it this week because I'm buying it. And it is the second of 3 books that I am actually picking up this week. The next book I want to mention to you is a new book. It is called Order and Outrage, issue number 1 of a 4-issue limited series from Dark Horse Comics. Here's the description. Gene manipulation has always been solely for those who can afford the expensive prenatal treatments. Income determines status, and more importantly, survival. If your genes have not been optimized, the order has no use for you. You are non-essential, less than, to be eliminated. Everything is geared to keeping the ship of state sailing along smoothly, no matter the cost. But in every totalitarian system lies the seeds of rebellion, independence, and outrage. See, tying in the title there. So this sounds super hi-fi, sci-fi heavy. And if you like sci-fi, this might be interesting to you this week. The thing that stands out about it the most for me is that the writer is Jim Starlin, who is somebody who's been around in the comic book world for a long time, as well as Rags Morales. So these are 2 people in the comic book world who are firmly established, successful comic book creators working together on this Dark Horse independent creator-owned project. If you're a fan of Jim Starlin and or Rags Morales, this is for you. In addition, also, if you're looking for some pretty hardcore sci-fi, it sounds like, in your comic book to try out this week, that's another good reason to consider picking this one up. The next book I want to mention to you is a new book. It is Doctor Strange, issue number 1 from Marvel Comics. Here's the description. Stephen Strange is back, reunited with Clea and Wong, or Clea. It's back to business as usual for the Sorcerer Supreme. Have your children fallen into a deep, nightmarish slumber? Are demonic refugees invading your home? Is your husband possessed by a satanic entity? Then call Doctor Strange. Join Jed MacKay and Pasquale Ferry as they begin a new chapter in the life of the master of the mystic arts. Okay, I think this is a pretty easy thing to talk about. You like Doctor Strange? Pick up his new book, starting with his new issue number 1. Yeah, they had the whole Doctor Strange is dead storyline going for a while there. Well, guess what? He wasn't really dead. What? But he's still alive or back, or whatever. I don't know. I don't follow the story. But he has a new number 1 this week. If you're a Doctor Strange fan, there you go. The next book I want to mention to you is a new book. It is called Fallen, issue number 1 from Red 5 Comics. Here's the description. Casper Clay, an ancient warrior and immortal servant of Zeus turned private detective, navigates the murky depths of a criminal underworld to solve the murder of a god at the hands of a mysterious killer. As he gets closer to unraveling the truth, he learns that there may be more at stake than solving a case. I mentioned this one this week because I thought there might be somebody out there who would be interested in it. That person is not me. There was something very convoluted about this description. It's like, you know, he's an ancient warrior and immortal servant of Zeus. Oh, okay, interesting. Turned private detective. Oh, sounds like a boring downgrade in responsibilities. That has to solve a murder. Okay, of a god. Does that make it better or more interesting or less interesting? Anyways, I obviously have some issues with the premise, but you know, if you want a Greek god flavored murder mystery story, well, Fallen number 1 would be for you. The next book I want to mention is a new book. There's a lot of new books from here on out. It's called Pop-Up, issue number 1 of a 4-issue limited series from someplace called Blood Moon Comics LLC. Here's the description. A brand new pop-up museum has arrived. It contains the world's most infamous and cursed supernatural objects. For creator and starving artist Diane Strickland, this is her big break. Tomorrow is the grand opening, and she and her family must work through the night to make sure it's all ready. But what do you get when you bring so many evil exhibits together? Absolute terror. So, typically in my comic book reading history, horror comics were never interesting to me. Never, ever. But then I discovered James Tynion IV and Something is Killing the Children, which is fundamentally a horror comic, and I learned to love horror comics. And now I can start to really appreciate what can be great about them. And the idea of like this putting together a pop-up museum of the world's most infamous and cursed supernatural objects, and then they the evil mojo that's taking place with all of these things all in the same room, turn it into, you know, absolute terror, as the description mentions. All right, that's interesting. If the art is halfway decent and you're into horror, this might be worth checking out this week. So, like I said, if you're into horror, maybe consider checking it out. Flip through the first, don't go to the end, first few pages. If you like the art and the art style, maybe consider picking it up. But if horror is not your thing at all, it doesn't sound like this is going to be your thing at all. The next book I want to mention to you is a new book. It is called Pop Scars, issue number 1 of a 6-issue limited series from Sumerian Comics. Here's the description. Pop Scars is a gritty Hollywood revenge story about a vigilante badass in a pink ski mask and the famous Hollywood movie producer she's out to kill, who also happens to be her estranged father. In Hollywood, revenge is best served in front of an audience. As our pink ski-masked killer pushes her way through a Hollywood crowd prepared to take her shot at her movie producer father, she's quickly swept into a brand new revenge plot orchestrated by her own unsuspecting target. Okay, so I mentioned this book this week because these these covers, there's things that I like a lot about this character design for this character, for this lady with the pink ski mask and the pink bustier, I believe that's called, and miniskirt and fishnets and garter belt. And anyways, there are things that I like about it and things that I don't like about it. I kind of like the look of it, but certain other aspects of it seem grossly sexualized, which is not appealing to me. But the premise actually sounds kind of interesting. It didn't at first. This kind of, she wants to kill her dad for whatever reason. And that's not particularly interesting. What's interesting is that she gets sidetracked and that it launches her into down another path. That's kind of sort of interesting to me. So this might be one to consider picking up this week and checking it out. And like I could see a weird level of like campy, pulpy spec potential there. Seeing it getting optioned into some kind of pulpy, campy movie or something like that. Possibly. I know I'm stretching on this one. But it's just a vibe I get, and I always just am going with my guts. So I feel like there might be something there. Is it going to make me buy the comic book? No. But I want it to be on your radar. I want you to be aware that it exists. So there you go. The next book I want to mention to you is a new book. It is called We Wicked Ones, issue number 1 from Scout Comics. Here's the description. After being orphaned in a mass witch burning orchestrated by the U.S. government, Celia Jordan grew up to be Washington, D.C.'s darkest secret. She now wreaks havoc as the city's resident witch and its most sought-after contract killer. When a politician hires her to kill a beloved and powerful superhero, Cecilia hesitates, but not for long. No one has been able to catch her yet. Why would they now? Featuring a breathtaking cover by world-renowned artist David Mack. I'll start with that last bit first. I like David Mack a lot. I've had the opportunity to talk to him a couple times at the Las Vegas Comic-Con. Los Angeles Comic-Con. More about the Las Vegas Comic-Con coming on this channel in the future. He's a nice guy. He let me interview him for the channel, which I'm sure you can find if you search through my thing. It's from 2 years ago. And I love his art. I think his art is fantastic. So I'm a big thumbs up on David Mack, and this cover is great. The premise is also pretty interesting. A witch has witch parents who are killed, thereby orphaned, but then becomes Washington, D.C.'s premier go-to witch assassin, who's hired to sometimes assassinate things like superheroes. It's just crazy enough that it might work, this whole premise. It's pretty original. I don't know that I've ever heard about a witch assassin working in Washington, D.C., especially the last part. So this could be interesting. I'm interested myself because it sounds fairly original, but I'm not going to pick it up. I can say no to it. But even more than Pop Scar, I would say check this one out. I was kind of like saying like maybe Pop Scar might be your flyer of the week, aside from, of course, my just one book pick. This one might even be a better choice than Pop Scar. So just keep that in mind. This one sounds interesting to me, but not interesting enough for me to run out and purchase. The next book I want to mention to you is a new book. It is called Ben Mortara and the Thieves of the Golden Table, issue number 1 of a 4-issue limited series from Source Point Press. Here's the description. Action and mystery abound as Professor Ben Mortara embarks on yet another globe-trotting archaeological adventure. In this issue, Ben is presented with a career-defining opportunity to solve the mystery of the Map of Solomon, a magical map that reveals the location of a powerful treasure. Ben is accompanied by Solomon, his mysterious benefactor's trusty and resourceful assistant. Together they explore ancient places and secret chambers in search of the map, staying one step ahead of the many forces that seek the treasure and its power for themselves. All right, well, I mentioned this one this week because it's different. It's not typical comic book fare. And if you like adventures, if you like, Tomb Raider, Uncharted, I'm focusing on video games because this is where I feel like this kind of stuff comes from. Indiana Jones, type of adventure, treasure hunt stories, this one might be one for you to consider this week. The next book I want to mention to you is a new book. It is called The Curse of Cleaver County, issue number 1, also from Source Point Press. Here's the description. Set in one of the deadliest fictional locations in the world, The Curse of Cleaver County is an ongoing anthology series that follows some of the most grotesque, gruesome, and gore-fueled killers as they haunt, horrify, and harrow the peaceful residents. This issue, The Hooked Horror of Harrow, begins here. Jennifer Harrow heads home to celebrate the sale of her father's business. But dark secrets from Port Harrow's past are about to resurface that threaten everything her family's built over the last 150 years. Okay, if you're looking for an kind of a horror anthology series to start, I know that there's been things like Ice Cream Man out there. Ice Cream Man has slowed way down. I think they're still putting out issues of Ice Cream Man, but it's sporadic. If you're not getting your fix of anthology horror stories, then this might be one for you to consider start checking out. And it comes out, the first one, this week. Almost there, guys. 2 more books. My last honorable mention today is a new book. It is called Deep Dark, issue number 1 of a 4-issue limited series from Source Point Press. Here's the description. Erica is looking for the mythical Deep Dark, hoping it sheds answers on her past. Instead, she finds herself in a world of gods and monsters, where all the horrors of myth and legend are very, very real. Okay. All the horrors of myth and legend are real. So does that mean Dracula and Frankenstein and the Mummy and dragons and ogres? I don't know. But if you like monster stories and horror stories, this might be something for you to check out. On kind of a side note, I want to mention something that I was thinking about when I was doing my research for this video, and that's that Source Point Press has a bunch of issue number 1s coming out this same day. I don't understand why they would do that. You would think that they would release not all at once, spread them out over weeks, because I might try one new number 1 book on a flyer in any given week, but I'm not going to try 3 or 4, and it seems so just put out 1 and hope that yours is the one that people pay attention to, and then not compete against yourself for people that might try something new. That being said, they're in the business of selling comic books. I'm just a guy sitting in a chair talking to a telephone camera. So I'm going to assume that they know much better than me, which is kind of a weird thing. But this Deep Dark, it's a very simple description. So I can't really say much about it, but it could be interesting, so I wanted to put it on your radar. And that takes me to the last book that I am going to talk about this week. This book is my just one book pick of the week. And that book is Neighbors, issue number 1 of a 5-issue limited series from Boom Studios. Here's the description. When Janet and Oliver Gowdy move to a quiet mountain town, their daughter, Casey, becomes part of a horrific chain of events, revealing that their neighbors are anything but what they seem. Soon, an unsettling old woman named Agnes Early fixates on Janet and Oliver's other daughter, 2-year-old Isabel. It becomes clear that it's impossible to know who to trust or who is even still human. Steeped in Irish and English folklore and mythology, Jude Ellison S. Doyle joins artist Letizia Canonici and colorist Alessandro Santoro to tread new ground in changeling horror. A tale perfect for fans of Eat the Rich and The Nice House on the Lake. All right, so I'm going to admit, obviously, a big reason, not obviously, maybe obvious to you already, but a big reason why I mentioned this book this week is that they're evoking The Nice House on the Lake. And I found it interesting that I really enjoyed The Nice House on the Lake. I find it interesting. I like that kind of slow burn mystery that's kind of creepy and unnerving, but like answers some questions, but keeps bringing up new questions, which is fine by me for that type of story. In addition, the other thing that kind of immediately jumped out at me for this book is that it's got some really nice covers. I'm looking them over right now. I mean, there's some really cool. I'm looking at 4. I'm going to put up for you. They're really pretty nice, and so I like that a lot. And when I see this caliber of cover art coming out, it makes me think that I feel like this is a book that Boom is pushing, and a little bit, and they tend to push the stuff that they hope to be most successful, not the stuff that they think is going to perform the worst. They promote the stuff, the things that they are going to perform the best. And although this description is a little unclear, it basically just sounds like these people move to a town and creepy things start to happen. It leads me to believe that there is, there's a mystery. And of course, you can't reveal too much. A mystery has to unfold. You don't want it to unfold in a preview description. You want it to unfold as you're taking in the narrative. So it's a bit of an arbitrary just one book pick for the week. This book was not on my radar at all before this week. The description is not necessarily grabbing me and compelling me to be like, this is a must buy. I almost didn't have a pick this week because I was like, well, if I pick The Neighbors, that means I'm going to have to buy it and read it so I can talk about it in 2 weeks. But then I decided, you know what? I think that there's enough something there. This is interesting enough to me to want to check it out and to want to buy it and to want to let you all know about it. So on a week that doesn't have any kind of clear just one book pick, and in a week where my automatic go-tos were Blue Book, which was never, it's for me, that's never going to be my pick for you, and Torrent, which I was just so excited about issue number 1. I didn't want to make issue number 2 my pick as well, because although I am very excited about issue number 2, so I had to go with, well, what else on this list excites me? And that was this book, Neighbors, issue number 1. And that is why it is my just one book pick for this week. All right, that's it. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the books that I mentioned this week, if there's anything that you're excited about in particular, and if you think there's anything that I missed, to let myself and other people know what I might have missed. In addition, likes are very much appreciated by me, so please hit that like button. Thank you for all of you who are watching this video on the regular. Once again, the numbers continue to grow. Oh, one thing, this is a reward for those of you who have stuck here all the way to the end, who didn't immediately click off as soon as I started doing my outro. The FOC cutoff for the new James Tynion IV book, World Tree, is coming this Monday. So if you're watching this video early, I highly recommend that you let your LCS know to pull you a copy of this book immediately. I am lucky enough to have friends in high places, and I read this comic book 2 days ago. It is awesome. Add World Tree to your pull. FOC this upcoming Monday. All right, thank you all so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.